Well, what's up, way? How are we doing tonight? Are we good? We're doing good tonight? Yeah, I know it's a little bit different for you guys tonight. Y'all are used to seeing like Sean or Joe or Joey, but now you all get the luxury of being able to look at someone good looking for once. So you're welcome. But yeah, man, my name is John Gibbs, and I'm so excited to be here with you guys tonight. I'm on the Wake team. But for those of you who are new in the crowd, you're probably wondering, like, why does this dude sound like Darth Vader and Bane, like, had a baby? Like, what happened? Did he smoke, like, 12 packs of cigarettes before he came up here? Like, what's up with that? And quick little story. So when I was 8 years old, I was in this golf cart wreck, and I was in a coma for 14 days, and I broke a couple bones in my body, and one bone being my Adam's apple. And so this Adam's apple is this thing in your throat right here. You can probably see it from anywhere in the room. And it caused me to have this distorted voice that you guys are hearing right now. But I came up with 4 reasons of why having a broken Adam's apple is a good thing. So reason number 1, it gets you out of hard work. All right, so you see, I worked at Chick-fil-A for 3 years. Where are my Chick-fil-A employees at? Anyone? No? Just me? You like Chick-fil-A? That works too. But so see, I worked at Chick-fil-A for 3 years. And for 3 years, they tried to get me to work in the drive-thru lane. But my voice couldn't go through the speaker in the drive-thru lane. No one could understand me. And so I was fine with that because y'all seen the lines at Chick-fil-A drive-thru lane, and they're absolutely crazy. So I was fine to get as far away from those as possible. But reason number two is it keeps you from getting thrown in the trash can. You see, when I was a freshman in high school, Freshman Friday was a real thing. I know a lot of you guys don't have Freshman Friday, but Freshman Friday for me was very, very real. And so you see, all my friends were getting like swirlies, they were getting wedgies, they were getting thrown in trash cans, and people didn't think that I was a freshman because my voice was so deep, so I never got thrown in the trash can, and so I'm very lucky for that. Reason number 3 is that people can't understand me all the time. So you see, one thing about me is that I say stupid things, like, a lot. Like, I say stupid things daily, probably a minutely. I'm probably gonna say something really stupid in this message, so just be aware. But one thing is, like, people can understand me, and so when I say something stupid, I just blame it on the Adam's apple. I just blame it on the broken voice box, right? And so, like, I'll be like, no, Dad, I didn't call you dumb. Like I said, I'm gonna go on a run. It works every time. I just always twist up what I really said. And then reason number 4, this is the best reason by far, is that it gets you the ladies. No, I'm just kidding. But for all my life, like, my voice was this huge crutch for me. My voice was this huge weakness of mine that it always made me fear things. So I always feared, like, getting stared at in public whenever I talked. You know, I feared all the comments and questions I was going to be asked. And so you see, fear is this thing that it controls our lives. It controls the things that we do. And everyone's experienced fear. We've all have experienced fears in our lives. But fear is actually like a crazy thing. Like, did y'all know that we only have 2 fears that we naturally have? So that's the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. These are the only things that when we exit the mother's womb, we only fear these 2 things. And so I did what I do best, and I went on Google, went on the internet, because that's what we do, and I researched some of the weirdest phobias that we have today. So let's get the first phobia. Ablutophobia. What do y'all think that is? It is the fear of bathing. You knew I was going to say that. I heard that. Fear of bathing. For me, I love my showers. I love my bubble baths at night, right? And so I thought no one could possibly have this fear, right? But, like, as I walk around Wake, I understand that there's no amount of Axe body spray. There's no amount of Old Spice deodorant or Degree deodorant that could, like, keep y'all stank from filling up this room, right? So please, guys, take a bath. But next phobia, we have somnophobia. And this is the fear of falling asleep. Yeah, y'all know what insomnia means. Fear of falling asleep. For me, I love my bed, right? I love sleeping. I take naps every day when I get home from work. I take a nap. And so I thought no one could possibly have this fear. No one can have this fear, right? But it wasn't until I went on the escape with you hooligans, and I realized 8th grade boys don't sleep. Where are the 8th graders out in the room? Oh, wow, we got like 4. That's sweet. But yeah, I realized you guys don't sleep. And so, but let's go to the next phobia. I don't know how to pronounce coulrophobia? I don't know. I don't care. This is the fear of clowns. Everyone has this fear. Like, I don't even know why I put this on here. It's pretty obvious. Everyone has this fear. Everyone has the fear of clowns. That's why we have clowns at every haunted house that we have. That's why a clown chases you with a chainsaw and makes you pee and poop your pants at the end of the haunted house. But we have one more fear. Hippopotamonster roses quipidaliophobia. Yeah. Hebrew words, yeah. You know it. Fear of long words. First off, who would make this word, much less attach it to the fear of long words? Because people who are afraid of long words are afraid to tell people their phobia because the phobia is so long, and it just doesn't make sense. But like, man, maybe your fear aren't as weird as these. Maybe they're more natural, like me. Afraid of spiders. Anyone afraid of spiders in the room? Yeah. Maybe you're like Joey and you have a fear of snakes. Fear of snakes? I'm not really afraid of snakes. Or maybe you're like Joe and you're a little baby and you are afraid of heights. Anyone afraid of heights? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so fear has this way of controlling us. You know, see, our fears have the power to control how we live. That's our first point. Write that down, students. Fear has the power to control how we live. Think about some of the greatest fears that you guys have. You know, maybe you've been afraid to ask that dude out. Ask that girl out. Hope you're not asking a dude out, dudes. Maybe you're afraid to ask that girl out to a dance or a homecoming. Maybe, you know, fear has caused you to not like jump off that cliff and into the water. Maybe fear has caused you to not climb that rocking wall. Maybe fear has caused you to, man, skip that class because you have a big test or something like that, man. Maybe your fear has to do with something that happened to you when you were younger. You know, for me, my fear happened to me when I was in 6th grade when I got made fun of for my voice. I got made fun of for the scars that I have. I got made fun of for my Adam's apple in my throat. Man, I was at that day that I feared what people thought about me. I felt insecure about my voice. Like, I let fear control everything I did. I let it control who I would hang out with. I let it control what I would say, when I would say it, and how I would say it, right? And so fear has this power to control us, guys. You know, like you don't know how many times I just prayed for God. I was like, God, take this voice away from me. Please heal my voice. And then once I realized that wasn't going to happen, like I let that be excuse as something like the things that I couldn't do. I let that be God's way of telling me the things that I couldn't do. Like I couldn't ever be a preacher. I couldn't ever speak on a stage in front of people, right? But those are just lies that I filled in with Satan. And so I thought that I wasn't good enough. You know, I asked God to heal my voice, and then I realized that wasn't happening. Words, John, again. I realized that wasn't going to happen, and I just let this fear fill my mind with lies. But man, lucky for us, the Bible talks about fear more than anything else. See, fear not is the most common phrase in the Bible, and it appears 365 times. See, God understands the way that fear has control over our lives. He understands how culture implements fear to make us do things that it wants to do. Right, so we're going to be looking at someone in the Bible who almost let fear control him. We're going to be looking at someone in the Bible who let fear hold him back from all that God had in store for him. So we're going to be in Exodus. We're going to be looking at Moses in the start of his ministry. But before we get into that, we need a little overview of what's going on, right? So you have the Israelites, and they're in slavery to the Egyptians. They're in slavery from Pharaoh. So Pharaoh is the king or the president. Like think of Trump or think of King David, right? Like he controlled Egypt. And he put the Israelites in slavery because his reasoning was because the Israelites were growing too much and they were becoming a security hazard, right? So the Israelites, they just kept growing and growing and growing. There's about 2 million of them. And he was afraid that they were going to overthrow Pharaoh's and the Egyptians' kingdom. And so there's no other people group in recorded history that has been treated worse than how Pharaoh treated the Hebrew people. You see, that like this dude Pharaoh is so crazy that he orders all baby boys to be drowned in the Nile River because he has this fear. He had this fear of being taken over. And his hopes were that the Israelites and the Egyptian race would just slowly morph together over time. And so God is looking down at his people, and he's like, had enough. He's had enough of the killing. He's had enough of the beating. He's had enough of the slavery. And he calls for a change. But he wants someone to help lead his people out of slavery. And so he chooses a guy by the name of Moses. He appears to Moses in a burning bush. Like, why a burning bush? I don't know. You know, feels a little extra to me. Feels like he could have done anything, like a dream or whatnot. But, like, I think we just need to appreciate the power of God that he, like, tried to put a little, like, a bedazzle in the story. And he appeared to him in a burning bush. And this is what God says to Moses. He says, "Look, the cry of the people of Israel has reached me, and I have seen how harshly the Egyptians abused them. Now go, for I'm sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people out of Israel. See, God asked Moses to rescue his people, an entire nation worth of people, millions of people. And your boy Moses, he's like a little scared, right? He's like, what? Like, you're asking me? Like, you're asking me to lead your people out of slavery? Like, you're asking me to go to Pharaoh? Like, the dude who's beating my people, putting them in slavery? The person who's torturing them and killing babies? Like, you want me to go to him? Like, okay, God. Okay, will do. Like, you created humor. Like, you're a funny guy. Like, you're funny. You're a funny guy. And so we see, instead Moses, instead of listening to God, he starts making all these excuses of why he can't do it. Right? Have you ever been there? Have you ever been told to do something, but instead you just make excuses of why you can't do it? Like, this is what Moses is doing. And so the first excuse we see Moses make is, he's like, God, like, who am I supposed to say sent me? Who am I going to tell Pharaoh to send me to say this? And God's like, boy, your boy, God, duh. Like, who else? And so Moses is like, okay, that's a pretty ridiculous statement. Like, how am I? Pharaoh is not going to believe the words that are going to come out of my mouth. He's not going to believe that God sent me. And so God goes to Moses, and he's like, what's in your hand, Moses? And he's like, a staff. You know what's in my hand. You know you created it. Duh. And so he's like, Moses, throw the staff on the ground. And then we see the staff becomes a snake. And so we see Moses runs away like a little girl. Like, anyone afraid of, like, yeah. People who are afraid of snake, raise your hands. Again, yeah. He runs away like a little girl, like any of us would. And God goes to him, he's like, Moses, come back. Come back to me. I need you to pick up the snake by the tail. And so what God is asking of Moses is to step into this fear that he has. So he's afraid of snakes. He just ran away. And so he's asking Moses to step into the fear that God has called him to do and pick up the snake by the tail. And so like some voodoo magician, he picks up the snake and it becomes a staff again. And so what God is telling Moses, what he's showing Moses is the miraculous things that he can do. He's showing Moses the power that he has, man. And he's showing him that you can do anything if you just believe in me. Like, you can conquer anything you want if you just believe in me. Like, I can make anything happen if you just put your trust in me. And so we see Moses, man, he's still making excuses. He's still making excuses after excuses after excuses. And we finally see the real fear that Moses has that's holding him back from the things that God has in store for him. We see the real fear that Moses has that's controlling us. And this is what he says to God. Moses said to the Lord, Lord, I am not a man of words. I have never been. Even now, since you spoke to your servant, I still am not, for I am slow in talking, and it is difficult for me to speak. You see, Moses has a stutter. Like, Moses isn't a skilled speaker, and part of what God is asking Moses to do is to speak to millions of people. And so Moses is scared. So you can imagine the fear that Moses has, because, man, many times our fears are fueled by our insecurities, our weaknesses, and by our inadequacies, the things that make us think that we're less than, right? Like, he has a fear of speaking in front of people because of his weakness. And what he's telling God in the moment is that he's not good enough. Like, it's like, God, you made a mistake when you chose me. Like, God, my fear, my weakness, you can't, like, nothing can overcome it. And then what we see is that God gets a little angry. And this is what God has to say to Moses. Then the Lord said to him, who has made man's mouth? Who makes a man not able to speak or hear? Who makes one blind or able to see? Is it not I, the Lord? So go now, and I will be with your mouth. I will teach you what to say. So we see God is getting mad with Moses. God is reminding Moses that he's the author of everything, that he created everything that's ever been or that ever will be. He's like, Moses, don't you understand that I created the heavens and the earth? Like, I created the stars in the sky. I created the beaches. I created the ocean. I created the lakes. I created everything you've ever dreamed of. But Moses, I created you, Moses. Like, I created this stutter that you're so desperately afraid of. And you don't think I can work through? You don't think I can work through that fear? You don't think I can work through something that I made? And it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to judge Moses in this moment, right? Like, it's easy to look at Moses and like, how did you say no to God? Like, he's God. You witnessed God. Moses watched the extraordinary things that God did. He experienced miracles in front of his eyes by God. He talked to God consistently, face to face, person to person, yet he still said no because of Moses' fear, because Moses didn't put his trust in God. You see, fear holds you back from the things God has for you. Fear holds you back from the life that God has for you. You see, fear holds you back from the things that God's in store for you. Like, imagine if Moses wouldn't have followed through with what God had told him to do. Just imagine it for a second. Moses would have missed out on the key opportunity to lead the best freedom movement this world has ever seen. Moses would have missed out on a key role for him in the story of Jesus coming to earth. You see, I was on a plane when I read the story for the first time. And for the first time since I'd given my life to Jesus. And at this time, I wasn't really considering becoming a pastor, at all. Because all the fears that I told about myself, about my weakness, and all the fears and lies I told about myself. See, my fear was my weakness, and that weakness was my voice. And I read the story, and I realized that I'm Moses, right? That I have this voice, and Moses has a stutter. I'm afraid. I have all the excuses that I'm making to God. I have all the excuses, and God has called me to proclaim the gospel to all nations. Yet I'm still just making these excuses, and I'm still not doing what God has called me to do because of all these fears. And guys, it's even the greatest fears cripple at the power of God. And I know what you're thinking, like John, my voice, my weakness, my fear, it isn't some voice, or it isn't some stutter. It's far, far greater than that. Nothing can possibly overcome it. If anything, I'm just going to push God away even more than I already have. And there's a guy in the New Testament, his name's Paul. See, Paul, like you and I, he has this thorn in his flesh, as he calls it. He has this weakness about him that seems to try to hold him back from the things that God has in store for him. And this is what he has to write in 2 Corinthians 12:8. He said, I asked the Lord 3 times to take it away from me. And he answered me, I am all you need. I give you my loving favor. My power works best in weak people. I am happy to be weak and have troubles so I can have Christ's power in me. I receive joy when I am weak. I receive joy when people talk against me and make it hard for me to try to hurt me and make trouble for me. See, I receive joy when all these things come to me because of Christ. Because for when I am weak, then I am strong. See, Paul is saying that no matter your weakness, no matter what you're afraid of, Jesus can overcome it. Jesus can overcome any weakness that you have. Jesus can overcome any fear that you have. Which you gotta put your trust in Him. You gotta believe that He can overcome it. You gotta believe that Jesus can conquer anything. You see, Moses seemed to have this major weakness that was going to pull him back from leading millions of people out of slavery. But it was through that weakness that God used him. God used him in spite of his weakness, and God used that stutter, and He made it a strength. You see, Paul asked God millions of times to take away his weakness. Right? He asked God constantly. He's like, God, I can't do it if you don't take this away. And it was that very weakness that Paul had that God used to expand His kingdom, to do extraordinary things that Paul had never imagined before. Because you see, students, it's victory over fear is faith in Jesus. All the fears that we have about ourselves, Jesus is the answer we have all been looking for. All the fears about not being good enough, all the fears about, not being pretty enough, not being handsome enough, not being athletic enough, whatever it is, Jesus is the answer that we've been looking for. All these fears that we have about ourselves, we just put our faith in Jesus. He can overcome anything. If we seek a relationship with Him, if we seek to find Him daily through His Word and through prayer. So students, I have 3 reasons, or 3 steps to how we can put our faith in Jesus. And the first one is to say yes to a relationship with Jesus. It's the obvious one. It's the one that you're like, duh, John. No brainer. But you see, a relationship is a 2-way street. See, most of the time we expect Jesus to just come into our lives. We expect Jesus to interrupt the rhythm of our lives. And Jesus he's standing there. He's waiting on us to come to Him. And we have to step into a relationship with Him. We have to say yes. We have to accept Jesus into our hearts. It's on us. It's not on Jesus. Jesus is there and waiting. And the second point is Let God's voice be the loudest voice in your life. See, I hear so many times all the excuses you guys make about why you're not consistent in your walk with God. You know, like you guys, I hear so many times that you're too busy to be with God. And like school is not a good enough excuse for why you're not daily praying, daily being in your word. You have to be consistent. You know, maybe that means waking up a little earlier and spending time with Jesus. Or maybe that means cutting out like 4 hours of Netflix that you guys watch all the time and just spending time with God, you know? You just gotta be consistent in your relationship with Jesus. And the third is surround yourself with people that will speak life into you. You see, for me, it wasn't until I surrounded myself with friends and with men who constantly challenged me and constantly spoke life into me that I began to see victory over these fears that controlled my life. Because you see, students, it's victory over fear is faith in Jesus. Victory over fear is faith in Jesus. And maybe you don't know who Jesus is at this moment. But I'll explain who he is. I'll explain the gospel. And if you think you've heard the gospel before, like so did I. I thought I heard the gospel so many times. I grew up in church. I grew up being spoon-fed Jesus. I grew up being spoon-fed these Bible verses, right? But it wasn't 2 years ago that I gave my life to Christ. Why is that? It's because I never paid attention to what the gospel actually was. I never paid attention to what Jesus was telling me in this moment. And so, man, like God looked down at his people 2,000 years ago. God looked down at his people, and he had enough of what sin was doing to their lives. He had enough of the torture that his people were going through with sin. And he called for a change. And so he needed a savior. So he sent his son, Jesus, a perfect man, to die in our place, to take the sin, to take the death that we were going to live. Right? And not only that, but 3 days later, he rose from the dead. He rose from the dead so that you and I could have life. He rose from the dead so that you and I could no longer be slaves to our own fear. But let me tell you guys something. Jesus did not die on the cross. Jesus did not get brutally whipped and beaten and spit on, flogged. He did not get a crown of thorns shoved into his skull so that you and I can still walk on this earth in fear of what people think about us when we talk about Jesus. He did not do all these things so we could walk into our schools embarrassed to talk about Jesus. We're all so scared to talk about Jesus in our schools. And it's because we don't believe the gospel with our full heart. It's because we didn't take that full step into what Jesus was calling us to do. And so I want with every head bowed tonight, every eyes closed, I want everyone to think of that fear. Everyone has that one fear in your life. You know, maybe it's that you're not good enough. Maybe it's that you're not pretty enough. You're not athletic enough. You know, maybe you don't have enough money to buy these things. You know, maybe it's you don't have the right clothes. Maybe you don't have the right style. You don't have the right friends. Whatever it is, I want you to think about that fear. And as we sing the last song, we're gonna be giving up those fears to him tonight. And if you don't know how to do that, it's just by prayer. Just pray for God to give you victory over these fears. So let's pray tonight. So Jesus, and we're so thankful for all that you say you are. We're so thankful that you came on the cross and you died for our sins. You died for us so that we could have life. God, I pray for these students tonight that they let go of all that they're holding on to tonight. God, I pray that they can realize that they do have fears that they're hiding. And I pray that they can just unmask the monster that is fear. God, we love you, and it's in your name we pray. Amen.